go through put up my presentation. Eric's in the room. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I think everybody's here. And we'll go ahead and start the recording. Lauren, if you want to tee that up for us, that would be excellent.
Yeah, we're recording, so we're good to go.
Great. So, first of all, not broadband map, sorry. The broadband consult group, sorry, there's a little typo on my first slide. This is a broadband consult group that the CBO is setting up for the purpose of tapping into a group of subject matter experts to bounce ideas off of. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody who has put their name in the hat for this initiative and endeavor, and for carving out the time in advance for this program. So I just want to say thank you for your participation. I think this is going to be a really good group, and I know we're all very excited to have you on this journey. So with that being said, I just want to go over a couple of things that we're going to cover today. This is our first meeting. This will be first of many. And I want to spend some time talking about introductions, the purpose of the consult group, roles and responsibility, governance, CBO programs, some of our programs. I know some of you guys are familiar with them, and some of you, we do have some other programs that don't necessarily always stand out because we're talking about a lot of money right now, but I wanted to highlight everything. And then open up for questions or discussion by this group. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I wanted to at least kind of go into the inner workings of the CBO and be able to answer any questions that you have, and then really talk about next steps. So introductions. I'm Brandy Ryder. I'm the executive director of the Colorado Broadband Office. I have a couple of staff members with me. This group might increase or change based on who needs to be at the table for these meetings, but for now, this is the group. Judd and Lauren, do you just want to introduce yourself and tell them who you are and how you support the CBO?
Yeah, sure. I'm Judd Carey. I'm Assistant Attorney General for Broadband. So I'm in the Attorney General's office, but my main client is the CBO and OIT, and I help the CBO, stand up their grant programs, give them legal advice, do all the contracts and the agreements for the grant money. So nice to be here, and thanks for joining.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Francis. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager for supporting the CBO. So I'm responsible for all the communications around the grant program, including media, any kind of PR-related stuff, as well as external communications for our stakeholders. So thank you all for being here.
Great. Thank you, team, for that. And like I said, we'll have different people on this call over time. So happy to have my initial team here and excited to get the ball rolling on this group. So with that, I want to maybe do some introductions for the folks that are members of the committee. And so what I'm going to do to make it easy is I'm just going to call on the folks that are in my window here, and you can just do a brief introduction, just say who you are and which organization you're with and why you decided to throw your name in the hat. So go ahead, Carrie Hackenberger.
Hi, everyone. Carrie Hackenberger. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Telecommunications Association, and wanted to participate in the group just since I represent a broad membership of providers across rural Colorado, and so think I bring that to the table.
Great. And there's Dan Dollar.
Do you mean me?
Yeah, there's two Dans in my screen, so I don't know if it's the same Dan. There's a Dan with a dog and a Dan with a landscape horizon in the icon.
Well, I'm Dan Dollar.
Okay.
I'm with
Finley Engineering. I do consulting work for broadband and energy. I worked with the state of Missouri's broadband office and an energy office over the last 10 years. So very excited to work with the group and help out any way I can.
Great. Eric Hiddle. Eric, we can't hear you. Can you hear us? Okay. We'll skip him and figure out what his audio is going on, but I'll go to Jeff Weiss.
Good afternoon. Jeff Weist, I'm the president of the Colorado Cable Telecommunications Association, which is made up of the state's cable broadband companies. And Brandy, we very much appreciate you putting together this group. We're eager to participate. As you know, our members have been very engaged with this process all along, and appreciate the opportunity to continue to be so.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. We're happy to have you here. We have Commissioner Matthew Salka.
Yes, hello everyone. Matt Salka, La Plata County Commissioner, Southwest part of the state, and look forward to being a part of this group. I sit on National Association of Counties telecommunication group on the federal side, as well as being as loud as I can be for the rural parts of Colorado for broadband. So I look forward to being part of the team. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Matt. Nathan Hoople.
Hi, I'm Nathan Hoople. I work with Ditesco. We primarily have focused working with local municipalities and counties as far as tackling some of their broadband issues and bringing whoever we can to the table.
Great. Thanks, Nathan. Ralph Brown. Ralph Brown.
I think you're on mute, Ralph.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I'm Ralph Brown. I'm retired from Cable Labs about 4 years ago as CTO. Judge Carey can vouch for me. I was just looking for opportunities to contribute my 40 years of expertise in telecommunications and broadband to Colorado. So glad to join.
Well, great. We're happy to have you as well. And Sandra Parker.
Hello. Yes, I'm Sandra Parker Murray. I'm with Communications Workers of America, a 25-year member of the union, and I'm the state broadband lead. And I just want to be here because this is the first time the funding has included labor at the table. So I am basically here to add some input or whatever questions I can answer about labor and workforce. Thank you.
Great, Sandra. And then, Eric, do you want to try to unmute yourself and introduce yourself as well? All right. Okay, so you might be having issues. We can come back to you whenever your audio works. And then there's Dan without a last name on my screen. Is that the same Dan?
Yeah, this is Dan Bartel.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I didn't have the last name input when I set up the chat here. But I'm not with an organization. I'm just a private citizen. I'm an instructional designer by trade. But I grew up in the mountains of Colorado, and my family still lives up there. And I've been on a 15+ year battle to try and get reasonable internet access up there, and it still continues to be a struggle. And so I've kind of taken a strong interest in advocating for broadband access in the rural parts of Colorado, and really overcoming those hurdles to getting real service up there.
Great. Well, we appreciate your perspectives as well. So hopefully I didn't miss anybody. So if I think I got everybody on the call. So again, I just want to say thank you for everybody. It sounds like we have a really good group. Yeah, it's a great diverse group. We have folks from industry, associations, labor, residents, consultants, communities. So this should be a really really well-rounded group. And this was something that we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that it was a well-balanced group because we appreciate all the perspectives. So I'll keep moving along. So I want to talk a little bit about the purpose. And the purpose of this call today is really introductory. Some of you have been following us. You'll know you'll see some reoccurring themes. Obviously, some of you that are getting acquainted with us, this is probably going to be new information for you. But I thought it would be really helpful to go over just the basics of why we're here, why we're talking about broadband. Outside of the obvious, we have a lot of funding that we're trying to deploy across Colorado. So, but I thought it would be really important to set us up for success ahead of the calls that we're going to have over the next several months. So the purpose of this group is it is advisory and not an authority. So if you're familiar with state infrastructure, these two formats exist across state agencies. This group is more advisory to the CBO. We have had advisory groups in the past, official, where we have meeting agendas, minutes, and we have to go through the whole appointment process. I feel like that's a great model for a lot of things, but I felt like for this endeavor particularly, I wanted to be a little bit nimble, less on the bureaucratic side of things. And I feel like I can say that because I manage bureaucracy 7 days a week. So I wanted to be a little bit nimble, more flexible, and allow ourselves some liberty to speak freely. And now, granted, some of this stuff, a lot of our meetings will be public, but I just wanted to kind of make it so that we can pivot and make adjustments without having to go through a lot of hoops. So for this group in particular, you're advising CBO on policies and programs. And so there's a whole host of policies that we deal with at the state, within our federal programs, our partners, and a lot of stakeholders. So we want to, bounce some things off of you. We want to understand what you're seeing in your field, whether you're industry or somebody who's in the mountains trying to get good internet. We want to hear from you. And so it includes program design, program implementation, things that maybe we need to pay attention to when we roll things out. Who needs to be at the table is another one that's really important to us because we don't know everybody. We try, we stakeholder a lot, but we just want to make sure we know who needs to be at the table when we're having certain conversations. Public-private industry trends. There's a lot of trends out there right now. I mean, if you open up your inbox and you subscribe to any of the listservs, there's always something new, which I'm always surprised by because, broadband, it's the outcome is the outcome, but there's a lot of ways to get to good connectivity. So it's very dynamic. So helping CBO understand what you're seeing out there and so forth would be great as we design our programs and make sure that we're designing the program that achieves the best result. Stakeholder management. Again, knowing who needs to be at the table, who do we need to be in front of? If you followed us for very long, we're crawling all over the state. We have tried so hard to meet people where they are, and we host over 100 meetings a year. So if we need to reach out to somebody, we're kind of leaning on you guys to help us with that. Interagency coordination. One thing I realized at the state when I got here, there's 5 different agencies doing broadband, right? Which means that we have a lot to coordinate as a state. And I've always been of the mindset, how do we make government easier for people? I can only control so much, CBO, but understanding what type of hurdles that maybe you all or you're hearing from circles that you're involved in, memberships, communities, regions. There's some of it that we already know, but how do we move forward in a way that helps us advocate better for CBO for better interagency coordination, and that is really, really important to me. So we'll try to do our best there. Yeah, I mean, we're trying. We got the broadband deployment board over to CBO. There's a couple other things I'm wrangling in. So we're down to 4, if that matters. We might get down to 3 by the end of fiscal. But anyway, yes, that's something that we're trying to do. We're always trying to streamline the process. The CBO really should be the sole source of truth on broadband, but I don't know if we'll get 100% there. But if we're not, we really have to make sure that we're coordinated with those agencies doing broadband work. This is not a grant review committee. I just want you guys to know, I just want to put that up front. You're not the committee that's reviewing grants. And so we will give updates on grants because I think that's important for this group to know. And if when in the internal grant review committees that we have at the state, if we're seeing anything that we need help with, in terms of, project overlap potentially, or, anything like that, will definitely come to you guys. Or for example, I was talking to Judd a little bit today about enhanced ACAM. Like, what are your perspectives on how the CBO might, charge forward with working with enhanced ACAM for a multitude of broadband projects or funding sources? I wish in a perfect world it could all have happened at once, but I feel like we're in different stages and it's hard for policy to catch up with implementation. So that's just one example, but you guys aren't going to be reviewing grants and scoring grants for the CBO. We have different systems for that. Broadband advocacy, any policies that we're working on, if there's anything that you want to see, being good advocates for those initiatives that we want to see move forward. Those are really important. I know you guys are all advocates anyway, and that's one of the reasons why you're on this group. So I think that's in your blood. If you're in this group, you're advocating for yourself, your members, and your community. So broadband advocacy is totally fine. Employees can't really do that at the state very easily. So, we try to be neutral, obviously, to our partners. But we do advocate for things at a federal level. So that's something that we do as well. So for example, if we're looking at, the letter of credit with the NTIA, if that's an issue, which we know it is, well, and it's illegal for us in the state, you can't require a letter of credit because you're eliminating a lot of folks from funding. So those are examples where we advocate at the higher levels for policy changes at the federal level and within state government to the extent that we propose them as a CBO. And so that's fine. And then obviously CBO ambassadors, we always like to, create a pipeline of folks that can help us move the needle in broadband. And I know it's really hard. Like broadband it's the infrastructure itself is pretty simple. Getting it done is really hard. It's expensive. And the further out you go in Colorado, the more problematic it is, more challenging it is. So where you guys can be an advocate for what we're trying to do moving forward. One thing that I do know is that all of you on this call represent different interests, and that's the reason why you're here. And we're not always going to agree on everything. So making sure that we don't have to gain consensus on everything. The idea is just to share your thoughts so that CBO can make better policies, better, well-rounded policies that try to serve as many people as possible. So being an ambassador for the things that we're spearheading would be really helpful. So with that, I'm going to go into roles and responsibilities. Does anybody have any questions so far? I'm going to hit pause on each section so I create some space for those that want to ask any questions of the previous section. Okay, I'll keep moving on. Go ahead.
I guess I have to raise my hand. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Ralph.
I'm going to say, so I'm assuming CDOT and the Office of Energy are probably two of the agencies you're mentioning that are doing broadband.
So there's CDOT, Office of Energy probably is, DPA is doing it, Department of Personal Administration, their public-private partnership division, and then you have DOLA,
right?
Department of Local Affairs, and then you have Office of Labor, Colorado Department of Labor and Employment through the Office of Future Work. They do our digital equity work.
Okay.
And and then you have the libraries, CD, Colorado Department of Libraries, CDL, and you have Department of Education. And they're doing more digital equity work. And then you have the Department of Corrections, who's involved in broadband, and you have Parks and Wildlife, because Parks and Wildlife, which is under the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, has a lot of facilities out at the state parks on state land that do not have internet. So it's a lot. So that's why I said I can't consolidate everything. To the extent that we do collaborate, though. Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to see if you could hear me now, first of all.
Yeah. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Eric Kittle. I'm in southwestern Colorado in Pagosa Springs. I have my own IT firm, which I support mainly governmental clients for their IT services. And that led me into trying to get better broadband. I think somebody else mentioned just trying to help out where you're at. That's what started me into delving into it. And it was actually a kind of an unexpected onion of as you peeled it back, how, vulnerable we were in southwestern Colorado. So that's led me to do a lot of work in terms of promoting broadband throughout, especially rural and western Colorado.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited that you're here, Eric, and thank you for your introduction. And your story is very familiar to a lot of folks across the state. So hopefully we can change those dynamics soon with this funding. All right, roles and responsibilities for the consult group. So just, in terms of your contributions, making them meaningful and constructive, I know broadband is a challenge for all of us, and we could certainly spend a whole hour talking about how unserved we are. But really, this group for me and the CBO is a group where we come with solutions. And so that's the purpose of this group, and that's our expectations. This group isn't to report outages because those are going to happen regardless of whether you have the best internet in the world or the worst internet in the world. So meaningful contributions, constructive, respectful. Again, we're all coming from different sides of this this topic. So I think active listening and all those things that we all do in our daily lives to be successful. So that's part of it. Meeting participation. If you're on this group, we expect you to participate. We do realize that sometimes you can't make everything, but if we see that you haven't been able to participate in a long time, I'll just be really honest. We'll ask you to step aside so that we can put somebody on the consult group that has the time. And I just want to put that out there at the beginning because I don't want people to forget that, we want you to come, show up, be present. So if there's no hard and fast rule, but if it's hard for you to make the meetings, maybe have some awareness around that, and then let us know. But if we do see that you can't, it's just too hard, we'll have a conversation. And hopefully you can participate when you want to, because, some of these meetings we might make live. I'm not sure yet. We have to talk to my team about it, but just be mindful of that. Meeting preparedness. So I know we didn't really send materials out early this time because we just wanted to kind of get this meeting on the calendar because it's been, you guys applied for a while ago. So we will send this stuff out to you ahead of time. So an agenda for you guys to know what we're going to talk about. Again, it's advisory, not authority. So, we're just all subject matter experts having really great discussions around topics that are important to this group, and helping us inform policy and strategy. And we have a lot of that going on right now. So it's really, really great timing for you guys. These are going to be public. So, these, and we can talk about live versus recorded. But I definitely, these will be public meetings to some degree. And you guys are subject matter experts. So I'm really looking forward to you guys leaning in that, letting us know. I always say that, the best outcomes are when we have groups like this, just talking about things that need to happen, things that we need to avoid. So really open-minded broadband director. And I know it takes a lot more time, but it's really important to our office. Any questions on the roles and responsibilities? Pretty simple, I know. So I want to talk about governance. Like I said, staff will send materials out ahead of time. Meetings will be recorded. All meetings and documents, just so you guys know if you're not familiar, are open to Colorado Open Records Act, so that's CORA. So what that means is that if anybody wants to, they can submit a request to the state to solicit information on our committees and all of our documentation. So I always say if you don't want to see it in the Denver Post headline, you probably shouldn't say it because it's probably going to get CORA'd. So just be mindful of that. And it's a process that we obviously support. We definitely support transparency. And so that's just something I want you guys to be mindful of. And then meetings once a month at this point. I think meetings once a month will be great. We can also talk about that at the end of this call just to see where we are on that. I don't want to commit ourselves to something. If I just want group consensus around the cadence of meetings and when we want to meet. And then any resources you need, I put the websites here. And Sandra did have a question. These will be available to you so you can reference the slides later. We have two websites, the Colorado Broadband Office website, which is the first one. And since the broadband office is in the Governor's Office of Information Technology, I have listed that there as well. I know sometimes when you're in broadband and telecom, you might have an affinity for technology. And we actually have a lot of really great initiatives around digital government, which goes hand in hand with broadband, and how do we make government more accessible to our constituents and residents in Colorado, which requires good connectivity. So there's a lot of intersectionality between our work and what OIT does. So if you're interested in it, there's a website for you as well. I want to talk a little bit about conflicts of interest. And this is really important. So to me, it's you either have a real or perceived conflict of interest. And I just want to go over the description here. Conflicts of interest refer to situations in which an individual or entity, such as an organization or a person, is in a position where their personal interests or financial interests could potentially compromise their ability to make impartial and objective decisions in their professional or fiduciary capacities. So this group does not have a fiduciary capacity, but we want to make sure that this group is as impartial as possible. And just so you guys know, when we had folks apply, part of that was you can't apply for grants because there's always a perceived conflict of interest. And we just want to make sure that we're representing the impartiality of the state when it comes to program designs and policies. You can still have your area of interest, but we just want to make sure that your intentions are pure. Not that I don't think they are, but if you do, we will have regular check-ins on conflicts that come up. And again, they sometimes do, and sometimes it's just a matter of saying, hey, I'm involved in this project over here. There might be a grant. So it could be as simple as that. I don't want to scare anybody off with that. It's just, we always want to try to make sure that we're impartial. So if something does change, please let us know. It doesn't mean that you can't serve. We just want to know that what's going on in your world if there's any conflicts. So that's where we are with conflicts of interest. Any questions before I jump into program overview? Good. All right. So this is a really basic org chart of the CBO. There's three main programs. There's a broadband deployment fund, mapping, and our advanced Colorado broadband program. The advanced program is mostly all of our federal funds. And the broadband deployment fund is a separate program that has a separate funding source, which I'll go over here in a second. And so the mapping and data team has been around for a long time, and I'll go over that in detail here. But for the broadband deployment fund, we do have a board that helps make grant selections and review grants. And then for advanced Colorado broadband, we do have an internal grant committee that helps review applications. So we're testing that model right now with CPF. And so, as we always do with all of our federal programs, lessons learned, we tweak, and we make it better for next time. So we're in the midst of that right now, and it's going pretty well for the most part. And then we have a couple of items here in pink. We have legislative, policy, compliance, and monitoring. Obviously, our Attorney General, Judd's on the call. We have marketing and communications and finance and contracting. The functions that are in pink are all of the support that is required for the CBO to be successful in executing these grants. I think some people think it's just our immediate staff, but there is a lot of support happening behind the scenes to make this program a success. And so in some ways, those folks work just as hard, if not harder, than the program staff. So I just want to highlight how much we we appreciate our agency partners to help us support this program. First one is the Colorado Broadband Deployment Board. So this was established in 2014. So, you might hear across the country, some broadband offices just started up, some they've been, not a lot have started up actually. I was asked to perform best practices on broadband offices when I started to see who's doing what. And I'm like, well, they're all brand new. So I think we're the best practice. So, the state's been doing broadband grant funding for many years. And so the Broadband Deployment Board, the Broadband Deployment Fund is one of those. It used to be in the Department of Regulatory Affairs, DORA, and we moved it over in 2021 to CBO. But it was a program it was a program to establish a last mile program. And it's open to mainly ISPs and some electrical co-ops, which are ISPs as well. It's not open to local government, but we've had a lot of success with ISPs industry applying for grants over the years to fund broadband. And so local governments typically apply for broadband through DOLA. So that's a natural fit for that. So this is more on the industry side. But their first grant cycle opened in April 2016. So we've done 10 grant cycles. It has an 11-member board made up of industry, local governments, and members of the public in unserved areas. And it has a board. So that board has authority over those funds that it awards. So it reviews and it awards funds through two or three different grant cycles. It really depends on how much money we have, but it's typically twice a year. It focuses on unserved and underserved locations. So a lot of the funding has gone to rural Colorado to help serve customers. So it's pretty successful. Like I said, it's 2 times a year, and they allocate about $4 or $5 million per cycle. Really depends on how much money is in the pot. It's called the high cost support mechanism. That's the funding source. And basically it's a 2.6% charge on an ISP's phone bill per quarter. And it's attached to your phone bills. And these are landlines. So landlines are going out of style. So the money in the high cost support mechanism decreases every year. So we have good success in allocating funding. Some states don't have any. So we're really lucky that we have that funding source. It requires a 25% match. And typically the grant applications are due January 15th and July 15th. We've been pretty consistent with those dates. But as of the last year or two, it's been a little all over the place because of just kind of how things have gotten delayed based with legislation and all sorts of things and board makeup. So, but it's typically those times a year. There's about an average of 20 applications per cycle, totaling 6.1 million per cycle. So I won't go into too much detail around this, but we have allocated a lot of those funds, and we're under sunset review right now for the actual program. So it's up for renewal, and we're rethinking the legislation and the Broadband Deployment Board and fund. And so I don't have really any specifics on it yet, but we will be proposing. CBO is advocating for its renewal because I don't know if you guys know, but the federal money is really, really specific and really, really restrictive. And we have to have an ability to fund things that just don't fall in the box. And there's a lot of stuff that doesn't fall in the box when you're talking about telecommunication. Not everything is fiber to the home last mile. There's a lot of steps before you get to last mile. So we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to those things and including them in a renewal. But yeah, and then in 2021, the state legislature through House Bill 21-1289 allocated $35 million of our state and local fiscal recovery fund dollars, and these are ARPA dollars. ARPA is American Rescue Plan Act money. Middle mile is a huge issue. So Ralph, that is I lose sleep out of that every night. It's like we have the last mile, but we don't have the middle mile. So how do you make that work? So we're going to have to be really creative in our goal to achieve universal coverage for broadband. So, but I hear you. We have that flagged as something that's an issue. The state has a role to play, so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, so we were successful in executing the $35 million for last mile broadband programs, or projects in our state, and we're pretty much finished with that. And just so you guys know, the high cost support mechanism funds through the broadband deployment fund, it's technology neutral, so it's not fiber all the time. So there's a space for a lot of telecommunication providers to apply for funding. We carved out a lot of flexibility there. ACP is required, and then obviously the speed minimums are there, 100 over 100. But affordability is really important. I will let you guys know that that's something that's likely going to be a permanent requirement for the CBO in our grant funding. It's just really, really important when you're talking about bridging the digital divide. So another couple points here. These are just kind of high level stats on what we've committed in terms of high cost support mechanism dollars and SLFRF. Yeah, let's hold on to that question. I will get to it. And then, like I said, we have a sunset review that's happening. So we're in the midst of that. That occurs in 2024. So we're ramping up for that this legislative cycle. So we're spending a lot of our political capital on high cost support mechanism. Here's an overview of our funding. Some of you guys might notice I said we had 75 million in total for broadband through SLFRF, American Rescue Plan. Right now we're working on capital projects funds. We were allocated 171 million. We're using 162 million for deployment. And then BEAD is another one, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA funding. We were allocated $826.5 million for BEAD for last mile fiber to the home. And then we have $21 million for digital equity. We're developing our access plan right now. And then the state was awarded $2.6 million in the Middle Mile Grant Program, which was a provider in Pueblo who received those funds. So we're tracking that as well. CBO, overview of CPF. We're moving quite ahead on that. Our goal is to serve 18,000 locations. I won't go over too much detail on this because some of you have seen it, and some of you, have been tracking us for a while. But our application closed, and we're reviewing applications right now. It's really, really competitive. It's oversubscribed by a lot, and I'll have communication that'll go out to our stakeholders. But it's oversubscribed by 4 times. So if you can do the math in an afternoon, you know what number that is. So it's very, 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 very competitive. And like I've said over the last year and a half, that it's not $162 million is not a lot of money. So we're going to do our best to make sure we fund the best projects that were submitted. Timelines for CPF. We are really at fall. We're reviewing applications, and hopefully we'll be able to contract everything by the end of this year or top of first quarter of next year. But we want to try to get all the funds obligated by 2024. That is not a requirement by Treasury for CPF, but we're moving ahead and we're be able to meet those timelines. But people will be able to start to have funds available in 2024 before the construction season. So that's our goal. We don't want to push any more deadlines because people miss construction season. So we want to make sure those funding gets out there so that we can spend it. And then we have to spend the money by 2026. BEAD is our big one. And I'll be honest, this is a program I get asked about all the time. So Colorado, we have had a couple of different things that we've had, a couple different requirements that we've had to satisfy. So our 5-year action plan was required. This is a strategy for broadband for the state. Volume 1, which really goes over, data. It is, we came up, and I'll go into detail about what it is, but that's the next, we published that in September in public comment. We ran a 30-day public comment process, and we're done with that as of today, and we will submit that plan to the NTIA for approval. I will tell you, we didn't get a ton of public comment on it that actually would have changed anything. It was mainly, I don't have good internet. So every time we do public comment, that's usually kind of what we get. But we do now and then get really great comments. We really got a lot of really great comments on our roadmap last year, the broadband roadmap. I was really impressed by the stuff, the items that contributions and feedback we received. So that was really useful. The initial proposal, volume 2, is what we're working on right now. We're drafting that. It really goes over the meat and potatoes of how we're going to do the program or implement the program. Then we have to open up a challenge process. The initial proposal, volume 2, will go out for public comment at the end of this month, 30 days, and then we'll wrap that process up and submit it to the NTIA. It's due at the end of December, so we're ahead of schedule. Then we open up a challenge process where people can submit challenges to modify the national broadband map. This is like the FCC challenge process 2.0, if you will, but a little bit more specific. And so that's what we're going to do. And the reality of it is, and I want to manage the expectations around it, is with the process the NTIA has set out, we're probably not looking at funds really in people's pockets until early 2025 with how long the process takes. So end of 2024. So if you're talking to suppliers that are trying to ramp up for when Colorado is going to be ready, it's going to be the end of 2024, but the reality is 2025. So just wanted to let you know, but it's coming and we're moving as quickly as we can. But the process will be fair to subgrantees, and we'll make sure that the best projects get funded. So I kind of went over the process here for the BEAD program, so I won't go into that too much. So the initial proposal, volume 1, there's 2 volumes and there's 19 requirements. They broke it up. But the first one is unserved and underserved locations, the lists. The public comment is to look at those lists and make sure that you agree with them, or we need to change them, or if we miss something, this would be the time to have you weigh in. And then defining our community anchor institutions, looking at that list. Community anchor institutions are libraries, schools, community centers, recreation centers, public safety facilities, helping us put more of those on a map because they are actually eligible for funding. They're not top priority in the NTIA's program, but if you happen to have some community anchors that you're funding in your projects, that's a good thing. And then obviously the challenge process, like I said, there's 4 modifications we're making to the broadband map, national broadband map. It's DSL, speed tests, area modifications, and multi-dwelling unit modifications. So that's what we're targeting for that process. And again, public comment closes today on initial proposal volume 1. So I'm excited that we're moving through the process. Volume 2 is more in detail. So this is the other requirements. We have local and tribal and regional broadband planning, which is requirement 2, local coordination, deployment of subgrantee selection, non-deployment strategies, eligible entity implementation activities, labor standards and protections. There's a pretty robust section on that. Workforce readiness as well. And then we have the MBEs, the WBEs, and then the labor surplus area firms. So I always call these the MBEs, WBEs, and ABCs. So accounting for that, making sure we have an inclusive program. And then cost and barrier reductions, climate assessment, low-cost broadband service options, middle-class affordability plans, use of 20% funding. So we can receive 20% of our funding before we get the rest of our allocation. The NTIA is allowing states to request all of it, which is great. That's what we're doing because, to my mind, it's more efficient and more effective because no matter how many grant cycles you have, it's still the same effort. So you might as well just do one. And then our regulatory approach and obviously our certification of the BEAD requirements. So I'll pause right there. That's our funding portfolio. And with everything, when you tally it all up, it's around $1.2 billion that the state's going to spend over the next 4 years. Go ahead, Ralph.
Yeah, remind me, when is the BEAD funding supposed to be expended?
By 2026, the end of 2026.
So grants will go out, or money will go out beginning of 2025, and it has to be used in 2 years.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tight. So,
that's a lot of construction in 2 years.
I know. It's a little. I mean, you have to start with a deadline, right? You got to start somewhere, but I feel like it's a little too tight. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there with the NTIA.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Oh, I was going to say, the funding has to be used versus projects completed. do the projects have to be completed by then as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everything has to be wrapped up by 2026. Nobody's talking about an extension yet, but 2 years is not a lot of time to spend 826 million. So I'm pretty aware of that. So if anybody asks, like, does she even think this is going to happen? I do have some concerns about how long it's going to take, and that really assumes that you have all your permitting and you're working with the jurisdictions that you're going to be working with, and also all the compliance and the labor and supply issues that plague many industries. So it's a really huge challenge, and so I'm really curious to see what the NTIA's response is, because I mean, like, I always reference Texas, they have $3 billion. I mean, I can't even, I wouldn't be able to spend $3 billion in 2 years or even 10 years, really. It's a huge amount of money, which is great, but it does take some time.
Okay.
All right, mapping, just going over this real quick. And I know we're moving along in time, but we started mapping. It's a huge piece of our program. We just launched our new mapping hub. We collect our own data, but we also use FCC's National Broadband Map at the core of our mapping abilities and capabilities. So, but we've been at this for a while, and actually our mapping began with an ARA grant. And those of you who are around during this time of federal influx of cash, this was the American Rescue and Recovery Act money back in 2008, 2009. And we were able to get a grant to start our grant program, our mapping program. So that's where it started. And we do require ISPs to submit data to us if they apply for grants. So that's a requirement. And the purpose of our mapping program is to collect granular broadband data from ISPs, incorporate speed tests, display data and metrics for people to use, and support our mapping and do a basic mapping analysis for our grant programs. What public comment for volume 2 will be, what we're going to kick that off at the end of this month. So I'm about 80% through volume 2, drafting it. And we have to send it to the NTIA to review ahead of time. So starting by the end of the month. And give yourself plenty of time to read it. If you're going to pull it up the night before, it's going to be 150 pages. So, and it's a lot of detail. So give yourself some time to look at it. If you're going to send it out to people, remind them, we want public participation. So start early, because it takes a long time to get through. Opportunities and challenges, the ongoing NTIA challenge process is, something we have to work on. Making sure we get accurate data from our stakeholders, incorporating digital equity funding and data into our challenge, our mapping capabilities. And then we have a lot of demands on our mapping team. So we have about 4 people in that shop. And so it's a lot. We do it in-house. We don't contract it out. So it's a lot of work, but our team's engaged and excited about the future. Any questions on mapping? Policy and strategy. So this is one slide. I just want to let you guys know what we're working on. So projects group will help us inform some of the strategies we're working on. Just to give you an idea, we talked about the Colorado Broadband Roadmap, which was a statewide strategic plan we did in 2022. The NTIA 5-year action plan, that's done. And we have our initial proposals, which aren't done. We're looking for help with that. So I will do a presentation with this group on initial proposal volume 2 specifically. And hopefully you can read it beforehand. I know it's a big document, but we have some time to wrap that up, and I'd love to have some thoughts on that when it's available. And then obviously legislation, every year we try to put forth good legislation then to improve our process and expand uses for funding and increase funding for broadband. So we're always trying to make sure that we're funding it adequately and ongoing, because broadband is not a one-time investment. To me, it's ongoing. It's infrastructure. Any questions on strategy? Okay, digital equity. So this is managed by the Office of Future Work. They do a really great job. So I don't really have any desire to consolidate. They're doing an excellent job. And given our bandwidth, they're probably doing it better than we could, because we're really busy with our $1 billion. So, but they're doing a great job. We're working on our digital access plan right now. The NTIA gave us money for this. So just so you know, the NTIA across all states and territories allocated $42.45 billion to broadband deployment, and then another 2.75 billion, and then another 2 billion for the tribes, another billion for the middle mile. Middle mile probably could have used a lot more, but it's okay. The fact that we have any money for broadband at this level is really great. We're in the process of developing that plan. It should be available hopefully by the first quarter, second quarter. Once that plan is finished, we've done a ton of stakeholdering on it. We will go ahead and just open up our subgrantee process to help bridge the digital divide through digital devices, digital skills, literacy, and affordability. So those are things that we're working on. But we're working on cross-sector digital inclusion alliances, so focusing at it from an alliance perspective versus maybe a one-off approach for grant making. So it should result in a bigger bang for our buck when you collaborate. So, but the implementation period ends in 2028. So we have plenty of time on digital equity, and it's a really great program. Covered populations for us, our objectives here are, households who don't have good access, aging individuals, incarcerated, people with disabilities, veterans, English with or individuals with a language barrier, members of minority groups, and rural Colorado. So, and these are some of the objectives here. So affordability, like I said, digital literacy, cybersecurity, affordability, and accessibility are all things that we're working on. And then this really kind of highlights, and I'm sorry that the text didn't show up. I'm having a couple of formatting issues with this, but the slide that I'll send out will have this white so you can see it. But anyway, it just highlights our community engagement in our working groups. And I want to take a pause right there and see if you guys have any questions about the digital equity side of things. It's really great work. It'll make a huge difference. And the team over there at CDLE and Office of Future Work are doing a great job. So if you want to be plugged into that scene, I can definitely hook you up with that team. There's a lot of really great work going on. So I'll pause right there and see, open it up for discussion and any questions that you guys have. Just so you guys know, the next meeting will be less of me talking. I just wanted to make sure that I got kind of the rules of engagement and program overview started for you guys so that you have a good foundation. Of course, you can always ask questions and go to our website for more detail, but definitely want to make sure it's more of an open discussion format. So go ahead, Ralph.
Just gonna say, how can we help you the best?
Well, that is a great question. So I think and this will change, right? Because we're kind of at the beginning stages of this. And when people ask that question, sometimes I have to think about it. But if I were to tell you right now, making sure that you read those volume 2, volume 1 is pretty straightforward. It's not really debatable in my mind. A lot of these templates that the NTIA says, here you go, fill this out. You can't change it. So, but, and I get it. They're trying to standardize it across a lot of stakeholders. But, reading that volume 2 when it's out so that we can get your comments on it is going to be a big deal. When we stakeholder our legislative proposals, which are coming up here pretty soon, giving us input on some of those proposals, telling us the pros and cons. I'm okay listening to like how things don't work too. Like I don't need to hear like, oh, hey, this is going to work all the time. Like you can punch holes in things. So just giving that critical, constructive feedback and on some of the ideas that were floating around, and then making sure that you look at those documents. And that's what I would say right now. I don't know, Judd, do you have anything, or Lauren or anything? Judd, do you want to weigh in on that?
No, I think that sounds good. I hate to be cliche about it, but part of it is just showing up, participating in these
90%,
meetings.
right?
Yeah, 90%. So, participating in these, even on this, we've had good questions and active participation. But yeah, coming down the pike right now is volume 2, and then our legislative outline of what we think we'll put on the table this legislative cycle coming up.
And what's the best way to give you that feedback? In email, or how do we get that back to you?
You can do it in email. You can do it in this format too, as well. Sometimes when you do it in this format, it helps as well. People can ask questions as well. So it's up to you really, but we definitely want to make sure that we hear from you.
I think all those documents will have an email address too that'll show you where to submit comments.
Okay. I don't, that's enough for me.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments or questions or discussion?
What Brand, did you have any response on Eric Hiddle's question about the funding, the possibility of moving the USFC to IP connection instead of landline, since they're kind of going away, becoming obsolete?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me to answer that question, Sandra. Sorry, Eric. Yeah, so we're looking into that. And we haven't landed anywhere, but it's something that we've been thinking about for a while. And the other thing too is, when you have fees attached to landlines for phones and not for voice over IP, VoIP phones, sorry, voice over internet protocol phones, there's a little bit of an equity issue there. And so, we're looking at how do we make that work a little bit better for the fund, as well as the initiatives that we're trying to fund as well. So we haven't finalized anything, but that's something that we're looking at, Eric, and I'm glad you brought it up.
I just didn't know if you were kind of beholden to any FCC designations of broadband not being a regulated utility, and that was keeping you from moving over to ISP connections or other ways to kind of accomplish the same goal as what the original high cost fund and USF fees were for.
Yeah, I don't think there's any barriers to that. I do know that there's some states, and I'll let Judd speak to like the regulation piece of it, but there are states that they do have that mechanism in place. So we wouldn't be the only ones.
Yeah, where I've seen it branch out to is definitely voice over IP, and then even on cell phones, because everybody has a cell phone now. You don't have a landline, and they've been able to do kind of a flat fee on all things voice, mobile, VoIP, and regular landlines. And then now you have a broader base to go after and a lower fee, basically, but you might end up with more fees. So we're looking at other states and seeing what the possibilities are.
Yeah. But that is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
And once we have our legislative proposal, we'll definitely workshop some of it with you as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ralph. Anybody else have any questions for our introductory meeting? And again, like I said, I'll talk less next time. Just wanted to do that introduction and go over everything so you guys have what you need to help us move forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brandy, I wanted someone just put in the chat there, when is the next meeting? I don't know if it's best that we do another doodle poll for each one of these meetings, or if you want to keep them regular. What your thought is, and what maybe the group's thought is on that too.
Yeah, that might be a great segue into next steps. And before everybody drops, I know Ralph has to drop, but is Monday at this time okay for you? We can certainly send a doodle poll. What I'd like to do is do a reoccurring standing meeting every month. Those are a lot easier for people, and get on the calendar. But I think, okay, so we'll do a doodle poll, and whatever everybody decides, that'll be the standing meeting. So we'll send that out to you probably tomorrow, Lauren, if you're okay with doing that.
Yeah,
and get it on the calendar. And I think monthly is a good cadence. We can always do it more if we want to, but I think at a minimum monthly at this point, because we have a lot of activity going on. So, all right, Monday is good for you. Okay. All right. Well, we'll do a doodle poll. And I'll send this PowerPoint out to you guys after this meeting. And we'll conclude for today. I just want to say again how much I'm really excited, looking forward to this conversation. I really do. Out of all the groups that we're working with right now, of course, everybody's my favorite, but I think this group has a lot of potential to really help us with our BEAD program, CPF, and a lot of the policies that we're going to be working on over the next couple of years. So again, appreciate you guys. Have a good evening. And I look forward to seeing you guys next month. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
thanks. Bye.
Right.